Good evening, everyone. So let's go ahead with the session three of genetics, which would be a completion session as well. Okay, so we saw what are the conditions which are autosomal dominant, inheritant, autosomal recessive, X-linked, okay, and the mitochondrial inheritance. We saw about trinucleotide repeat disorders as well. And the other important thing that we saw was the DNA replication, the transcription, and the translation process. One of the important genetic molecular techniques is even polymerase chain reaction, and apart from that, there is Fish and ELISA. When I come to polymerase chain reaction, it means that there is a region of the DNA, okay, or a portion of the DNA that has to be amplified, okay, and that amplification may be needed for detection of a particular segment of DNA which is faulty, okay, which is defective in a particular disease, or any gene that you want to detect whether it is present or not, because it's such a small portion of DNA. Only if you amplify it will your detection be actually qualitative to prove it is that sensitive or specific enough to prove it is positive. Okay. So any amplification of mutated genes or any amplification of a DNA segment that has to be for diagnostic purposes most probably should be polymerase chain reaction. When I come to polymerase chain reaction, there are three steps. It's denaturation, annealing, and elongation. So what happens is my double stranded DNA region when I talk about, okay, so this is my double stranded DNA. Okay, this is 5 dash. If you remember the replication part, this is 3 dash. This is again 5 dash. Okay, suppose this is the region I have to amplify. Okay, what will I do is I'll first expose this strand to heat. Heat is going to cause denaturation of this strand, and this heat is usually at a temperature of 94 to 95. Okay, in the next part, what I'll do is in this strand, I will attach one RNA primer. Okay, complementary RNA primer I'll attach to the other strand. Okay, on the basis of this primer, okay, my DNA polymerase is going to act on this. But because now it is a high temperature for this, I need an enzyme of a DNA polymerase which is thermostable, which is heat stable. Okay, that is why there's something called as thermus aquaticus, okay, Taq polymerase. Okay, this form of DNA polymerase is required in PCR. So this will help in what? Elongation of this RNA primer and amplification of this particular part by extending the deoxynucleotides. Right? So what will happen? The DNA polymerase will come, will add new complementary nucleotides. Okay. So denaturation, annealing is this RNA primer thing. And after this, annealing is usually at 54 degrees Celsius. And after that, I have this strand, which is now completely amplified here. And this on the basis of the new RNA primer, this strand. Right? Once I get to know this, that this is the amplified portion with its complementary thing, I will run the cycles of PCR. Say I run 30 cycles, I'll run 50 cycles, and then I get finally the product of the amplified DNA. This part complete, right? For this, you require heat resistant DNA polymerase enzyme. Okay, so you see the steps: denaturation, annealing, and elongation. Correct? So the first step is denaturation. It's the amplification where the double stranded DNA is denatured or broken down, thermally broken down into two single stranded DNA templates. After that is the annealing. That is the primer comes and anneals or sticks at the complementary site of the strand. And then I get the elongation process where the tagged DNA polymerase starts synthesizing new or adds new complementary nucleotide. Okay? This is the steps of PCR. There is something called as FISH, which is fluorescence in situ hybridization. Okay. Now, what does this do is it is going to detect any chromosomal abnormality or any identifying a particular sequence or a specific sequence of DNA, or that sequence if it is abnormal, say example mutations, right? It is only with the help of a fluorescent probe. Okay. So first I take a DNA probe or an RNA probe. Okay. Then what will happen? A particular DNA sequence against which I want but this detection. That complementary probe I'm going to take. Okay, that could be any segment of the DNA, any strand of the DNA, and then that strand I'm going to multiply first by PCR because then it becomes convenient. Otherwise, it's a very small segment. Okay, then I do fluorescent radio labeling in that DNA. So now I have a fluorescent labeled DNA probe that is generated. Now this DNA probe, when I add it to the mixture, my complementary probe will also be there. So they will come and stick or anneal to each other. That is called hybridization. It is only for the purpose of proper detection or easier detection, is because of which I use a fluorescent marker on that probe. Okay. The other principal technique which we use is ELISA. Okay. Enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Now, okay, it could be direct, indirect, or sandwich ELISA, but all the details of this principle is just that it is antigen antibody interaction. Okay. Suppose I take a blood sample of a patient who has HIV viremia. Okay. And I have a ELISA plate which has HIV antibodies in it. Now, when I mix a drop of blood from a patient who is HIV positive into the ELISA plate which has an antibody in it already, right? So the infection by a pathogen, I'm able to detect by presence of antigens, which may be a protein antigen, which may be a glycoprotein antigen, or by detecting the antibodies itself. Okay, these are what is called as your ELISA, right? It is linked with the antigen and the antibody, both come. Okay, they interact with each other. Then the binding helps with the help of enzyme. Therefore, it is called as enzyme linked immunosorbent, right? Then this complex comes and interacts with a chromogenic substrate is already present in your ELISA plate, right? The chromogenic substrate breaks down and that gives you a color. Again, this color will help you in detection of the product a little easier, like you use fluorescence in fish, right? So these are three important molecular genetic techniques. Apart from this, last time we saw something called southern blot, northern blot, western. You just have to remember what are they used for. Okay, as in what is detected by what. So I use something called as snowdrop to tell this. So what is this? South, north, and western blot. Okay, that is used to detect DNA, RNA, and protein. Okay, south, north, and western blotting is used to detect DNA, RNA, and protein. Okay, so these are the molecular this thing. Now, when I come to cancer genetics, I have something called as tumor suppressor genes, as we told, and there was something called as proto-oncogenes. Okay, proto-oncogenes you can say as RAS, like in your rhabdomyosarcoma. Okay, your c-MYC in Burkitt's lymphoma, your n-MYC in neuroblastoma. Okay, some tumor suppressor genes like your APC gene of colorectal cancer. Okay, very important gene, your BRCA, breast cancer, ovarian cancer genes, BRCA1 and 2, your WT1, Wilms tumor gene, your retinoblastoma gene. These are all tumor suppressor genes. Okay. So what happens is in your cell cycle, which is happening, there has to be certain natural breaks which will prevent uncontrolled proliferation of cells. These natural breaks are your tumor suppressor genes. So you understand by the word itself that it is going to prevent unwanted multiplication of cells and therefore formation of a tumor. But on the other hand, I have a proto-oncogene, proto. So that is going to facilitate the multiplication of cells and form a tumor. So you and I have a perfect strike or a balance between these tumor suppressor genes and the proto-oncogenes, right? In order to develop a tumor, you have to understand that I need to have a loss of function of tumor suppressor gene and a gain of function of proto-oncogene, right? So my RB gene to develop a retinoblastoma should not be able to do its normal tumor suppressor gene, then only it is going to cause tumor, right? Whereas if I tell my c-MYC gene, which is a proto-oncogene, so it is a proto-oncogene, so it is causing oncogenesis. Okay, so to cause a tumor, which is also oncogenesis, you need to function, right? The gene needs to function, and that is why it will be a gain of function mutation in this gene to cause a tumor. Okay, so these are the genes, and then we know this after this, the inheritance of the disorders can be autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, X-linked recessive, X-linked dominant. Okay, there is something only from your mother that you inherit, which is called as your mitochondrial inheritance. Apart from these, two important phenomena that we saw was trinucleotide repeat disorder, right? Can somebody please tell me two examples of these trinucleotide repeat disorder?
Attendance disease.
Okay. What else? Yes. Was Fragile X a part of it? Yes. Do you all remember trinucleotide repeat that we discussed? Hmm? Yes. Number of repetitive sequences of three nucleotides, which could be different, and depending on what the repeats are, the disorders is seen. And there was one very famous phenomena that we saw with respect to this, that was genetic anticipation. Can anybody tell me what was that? Then we come to the other disorders again. Because what happens from generation 1 to generation 2 to further generations, okay, these repeats which I have, okay, you and all me all have the normal repeats. It may be a normal cutoff of 5 to 30, 100 to 50, okay, but a person with a disease has a pathological number of repeats, right? So in my next generation these repeats are going to increased or amplified in number, right? So there is generation increase of or expansion of repeats from one generation to another. And because now I have more number of repeats, what happens to my disease is it is going to come early and it is going to come more severe. Okay. And this phenomena is called as your genetic anticipation, which is seen in trinucleotide repeat disorders. Is it clear? Okay, so what are those disorders? Fragile X, Huntington's, myotonic dystrophy, Friedreich's, spinocerebellar ataxia. Out of which exception, which becomes also an MCQ, is which is a little unusual. That is not, that doesn't show a peculiar phenomena of anticipation. That is Friedreich's ataxia. Okay, otherwise Huntington's, myotonic, these are all examples where you will see classical anticipation phenomena. Okay. Next, other important phenomena that we see with respect to non-Mendelian inheritance is your genomic imprinting, right? It was nothing but differential expression of a allele, okay, with respect to their parental origin, right? What happens is I have two alleles of a gene, right? In each one of us, one is suppressed. Okay. It could be maternal suppressed, it could be a paternal suppressed. And the other gene is active, which is responsible for functions. Now, what happens is because of some chromosomal abnormalities, most common chromosome found was chromosome 15. Because of some abnormalities, and most common abnormality documented in studies is methylation. Okay, if you know, methylation makes the DNA inactive, as we saw last time. Okay, so now what happens, this active gene also becomes silenced because of this process, and this is called as your genomic imprinting. Okay, now to remember this, mothers are angels, okay, and PP. So when there is paternal imprinting, I call that Prader-Willi syndrome, and when there is maternal imprinting, I call it as Angelman syndrome. Both are related to chromosome number 15. Okay, so there is a differential expression of alleles. Now, what was the important feature that I told you about Prader-Willi? Do anyone remember? We discussed these slides, no? Come on, tell. Which was the feature that I told you that will help in your MCQs to think about Prader-Willi instead of Angelman? Yes? Childhood obesity. Okay? This obesity is because of hyperphagia, and this hyperphagia is because of a hormone mediated increase in satiety that is called as your ghrelin. Okay, when your ghrelin hormone increases, you desire more, you crave more for food, and that leads to overeating and then obesity. Okay, whereas important in Angelman would be developmental delay, seizures, ataxia, okay, and a large mouth. Apart from that, I also told you what the clinical STEM question can come instead of a direct one-liner is your fragile X. They may give you some then fears of characteristics that a child is coming to you with so and so features. What do you think about the inheritance of this condition that way? Or maybe you can see which phenomena is expected in this condition. So you have to first figure out that it is they're talking about fragile X, which is a trinucleotide repeat disorder, and that is why they're asking you about anticipation. Okay, so everything mostly is large here except for mental retardation, I can say, which we now don't use as a word. We use as an intellectual disability. Okay, autistic. Otherwise, it's prognathism, large ears, large testes, prominent forehead. Okay, this is about the fragile X. Okay, now there are certain terms in genetics. One is called as the penetrance. Now, what is penetrance? The proportion of the population of individuals who carry a disease causing allele, okay, out of those who actually express the disease related phenotype. Okay, suppose I have this individual with one this phenotype and I have another individual with this phenotype. Okay, and there are multiple cohorts of the same in this population and in this population also. Okay, now these proportion of population of individuals is carrying a disease causing allele, right? But this cohort is expressing the phenotype. Supposing I say, just take an example. Supposing they are having a cystic fibrosis abnormal gene. This population is expressing the phenotype. Like they are coming to you with pancreatic symptoms, malabsorption, lower respiratory tract infection, whereas this cohort is not expressing. Okay. This is called as your penetrance. Okay. Whereas what happens is when there is a two alleles here, one allele is expressed in preference to another allele. Okay. So this allele, if it gets expressed, that consequent phenotype the patient will develop. Okay. And if this gets expressed, this will be the phenotype that is going to get expressed. Okay. Now, which allele takes over the dominance that I will be the one that will be expressed? My expression is going to convert that individual into a particular phenotype is called as your phenomena of dominance. And the other one which can't dominate, you call it as recessive. Right? Next is the variation in the expression. So you understand not all Marfans can come to you with tall height. Some Marfans may directly land to you with cardiovascular abnormalities. So the degree of the variation, okay, in expression of a phenotype of a particular disease, right? The degree of variation in the expression of a particular phenotype of various disease, that is called as your expressivity, right? So penetrance, dominance, and expressivity, these are the terms that could be tested as definitions in your MCQ. Okay. Now, we saw the DNA transcription, replication. We just go through because it's been a long time. So I'll just show you those slides of transcription and okay. Now, when I talk about DNA replication, okay, I told you there is a start phase, initiation phase, okay. Then there is a multiplication, that's the elongation phase, and there is a termination phase, right? The 5 dash to 3 dash is a strand which is a leading strand, right? And then the other thing is the lagging strand. The lagging strand is synthesized in fragments, right? The unwanted fragments are removed, Okazaki fragments, and then they are joined together by the DNA ligase, right? So this was a feature of DNA replication. When I come to transcription, I know that it was a synthesis of RNA from DNA in the same sense. Okay. So complementary nucleotides would be added and there will be synthesis. So can you tell me on the basis of this, what would be the complementary strand, DNA complementary strand? Okay. Now this is a DNA. Okay. If I tell you that this strand is AGTGCTTAC. Okay. Can you tell me what would be this strand? Tell me. Yes? Anyone? Adenine will come and pair with thymine, guanine with cytosine. Okay, this will be A, then it would be C, G, A, A, T, G. Is this clear? So we know in DNA the nitrogenous bases. So I'll just tell you about the structure of DNA, which is a double helix, as we all know. Okay. So this which I am drawing is your sugar phosphate background. Okay. And this I have are the nitrogenous bases. Okay. If they are adenine and thymine, they join by two nitrogenous, this two hydrogen bonds. If they are cytosine, guanine, they join by three hydrogen bonds. Right. And what is DNA basically? It's a double helix. Okay. There are repeating units of nucleotides. What is a nucleotide? It is a sugar, phosphate, and a base. These three together form one nucleotide or one monomer. Okay. And the repeating units of these nucleotides together form your helix of the DNA. Okay. Sugar is deoxyribose in DNA. And what are the nitrogenous bases? These bases in DNA are these four bases. Okay. The only thing is which base gets added in RNA, which is not there in DNA, which is a nitrogenous base you add in RNA, which is not there in DNA. Yes? So your thymine, if you remember, Y. Okay. Cytosine, Y. These two are your pyrimidines, Y. Right? And your adenine and guanine are purines. And we know in a DNA structure, adenine purine pairs with a pyrimidine with the help of hydrogen bond. Okay. And in DNA, what is the pairing? It is adenine thymine with a 2 hydrogen bond and cytosine guanine with 3. And out of which thymine and cytosine are pyrimidine. So you can remember as thymine, cytosine, and pyrimidines, all Y. Okay, so these are pyrimidines. Okay, and adenine, guanine, these two are your purines. Okay, and the structure which is condensing and finally forming your chromosome, which is a part of a DNA again, by which, because DNA is very long, it has to be packaged to come into your cell, which is very, very minute structure of your body. Okay, so the packaging form of DNA is called as your nucleosome, right? So nucleosome is formed when DNA strands wrap around a cluster of proteins. Okay, and these are the proteins called as histone proteins, which are basic negatively charged proteins, or cationic proteins. So these are H2A, 2B, 3, and 4. Okay, two such molecules of each proteins will form 8 molecules, which is something called as your histone octamer. Okay. Now, when I have this histone octamer, is this is the what is the base of the octamer? The four would be another 3D structure at which my DNA is going to come and bind. Okay. The DNA is going to come and bind to this octamer structure. Okay. So whatever DNA is bounded around the nucleosome, that is called as my core DNA. And whatever DNA I have in between the nucleosome is called as my linker DNA, and that linker DNA is attached to it with H1 nucleosome, which is your linker DNA, which is out of the octamer, because octamer had 2A, 2B, C, and D, your 3 and 4, right? But H1 is out of the octamer. Okay, that is a part of your linker DNA. Finally, this 8 octamer with the core DNA, with the linker DNA, and this core DNA together will multiply and continue to form, condense, and then finally form a chromosome. Okay, so can you tell me which were the 4 histone proteins that was forming the octamer? Yes. Which were the 4 histone proteins that are forming the octamer? Okay. So we are talking about transcription. Similarly, initiation, elongation, and then comes the termination, right? And the what is it synthesized here? DNA to RNA. So you will need something that synthesizes RNA, that is your RNA polymerase. Okay. This is a step by which your synthesis of RNA comes. Okay. And then this newly synthesized mRNA will undergo post-transcriptional. So the word says after transcription, modification, splicing, capping, and tailing, right? The poly A tail gets added, 7-methyl guanosine cap gets added, and the splicing. Splicing is the non-coding part, which is the introns. They get removed, and the coding part, that is the exons, will get added to make the mRNA very, very functional. And that is the complete transcription process. And then this mRNA is ready to come and interact with your ribosomes and tRNA to complete your central dogma and then finally synthesize the protein. That is your translation process. Okay. Can somebody tell me the sites which were there in the ribosomes to help in translation process? Which were those sites? Yes. Which were the 3 sites? Yes. Small subunit of the large ribosome, large subunit. This becomes the mRNA. Okay, tell me what was the sequence of nucleotides on the mRNA called as? That AUA or UGA or UAA or AUG. What was that called as? What were the 3 sequence of nucleotides on the mRNA called as? Anyone? Do you all remember what was codon, anticodon? So tell me whether so I'll make it a little easier, one step more. Whether codon was there on mRNA or tRNA? Yes. Codon was there on mRNA, tRNA. Can anyone tell? Okay, so this was mRNA that had codon. Okay, so if you remember, I told you initiation amino acid is usually fixed, and that is methionine. Okay, and there were three stop codons: UGA, UAA, UAG. This tells you that the process of termination has to occur in the translation process. Okay, and what was bringing the amino acid? The tRNA was bringing the amino acid, and the tRNA had something called as anticodon. Okay, so this was AUG that was recognizing that the tRNA anticodon containing methionine would come here, right? So there was A site, there was P site, and there was E site, right? The current amino acid this would lie on P site. All the new incoming amino acids which were there after that would all come entry from A site, form a peptide bond with peptidyl transferase, and after the peptidyl bond transferase, what happens? This will get come from E site, and then from E site they'll be thrown away. Exit side, you can remember it as. Okay, so this is the process of translation. Okay, so there is a initiation. Usually it's with methionine tRNA. Then elongation, where the peptide chain grows with the help of peptidyl transferase, right? The tRNA is there in the P site. I will add the new tRNAs as per the sequence of amino acids in my protein, which is to be synthesized from the A site, and then they will leave finally that through the E site. And once I get the stop codon, my protein synthesis is going to get terminated. This is what is my central dogma of molecular genetics. Okay, so tell me, I will tell you now. You have to match and tell me. So this is CMYC, this side. I have NMYC, okay, BCL2, and here I have BCR-ABL. Okay, here I have A as CML, B I have as follicular lymphoma, C I have as Burkitt's lymphoma. This is your hematology question also. D is neuroblastoma. Can you all match the following and tell me which is in what?
1C,
Any answer?
1C, 4A,
Yeah. 4A.
BCR-ABL,
That is CML. Yeah. 4A. Okay.
and
2 is go in sequence, no? So 1C, correct.
NMIC is neuroblastoma.
Very good. So 2D.
2D,
This
2D,
is BCL2.
3B.
3B. Very good. And 4 is A.
Or
Clear? Right?
yeah.
Okay. Next, tell me what is not true about autosomal dominant inheritance. Okay, autosomal dominant. First statement I want to tell you is both males and females are affected. Okay, second I'll tell shows phenomena of non-penetrance. Okay, C I'll write both homologous individuals and both heterozygous individuals can manifest the disease. Okay, and fourth I tell we the risk of autosomal dominant diseases increases with each successive pregnancy. Can tell me which is false.
C.
D. Good. Okay, can you tell me about the other options? Yes. Is this true? What is this heterozygous condition of a dominant disorder called as? Yes. Okay, this is autosomal dominant condition. Okay, chondroplasia, suppose I'm telling, or hereditary spherocytosis. Okay, he is heterozygous for that mutation. That means he is carrying only one allele, which is defective. So, what is this condition called? What do you call this individual as? He will manifest the disease. Okay, but when I tell it is for autosomal recessive conditions, what do I tell this individual as?
Carrier.
Carrier. Very good. Okay. So what is non-penetrance? We heard about what was penetrance, what was expressivity, right? What was dominance. Now, non-penetrance is nothing but lack of clinical signs and symptoms, which will lead to the particular phenotype of a disease. Okay. So the patient has this, which is an abnormal gene. Okay, but not able to express that signs and symptoms, which is responsible for a particular phenotype. This is called as non-penetrance. Okay, that is no particular phenotype. The patient's phenotype would be absolutely normal in spite of having an abnormal gene. Okay, now you recall and tell me what was the phenomena where the expression of a phenotype was varying in different populations, okay, in different groups of individuals in a population. Same abnormal gene was giving you different variation or different expression of a phenotype. I gave you the example that Marfan's can just come to you with joint subluxation, lens dislocation, and tall height, or Marfan's may even come to you directly with aortic dissection. What was that phenomena called as? I give you options whether that was called penetrance, dominance, or expressivity. Yes, what was expressivity? Very good. Okay, now you listen to this question very properly. During the newborn physical examination, pediatrician notes cleft palate, okay, low set ears, okay, hollow systolic murmur along the lower left sternal border. Blood test shows decreased calcium. Chest X-ray shows absent thymic shadow and a boot-shaped heart on chest X-ray. Further investigation showed patient does have some amount of RVH and VSD on echo. Okay. Which of the following congenital heart disease? Which of the following congenital heart disease is present in this condition, and what is this condition? We have discussed this. Cleft palate, low set ears, cardiac disease, hypocalcemia, absent thymic shadow. What was this disease? Yes? The answer is on your screen.
These are.
Received by
Yeah. Yeah. Absent thymic shadow. Okay. Why is the hypocalcemia seen here? Anyone? Why do you get low calcium in diGeorge? What is the problem with your parathyroid? So you think and tell me, if the calcium is low, what do you think? diGeorge should have hypoparathyroidism or hyperparathyroidism?
Hypo,
right? So you know something. You remember Catch 22? Do you know something about Catch 22? Yes. Catch 22 is the way by which you can remember this 22q11 deletion syndrome called diGeorge, which is your cardiac defects, okay, abnormal facies, thymic aplasia, okay, cleft palate, low set ears, hypocalcemia because of hypoparathyroidism, okay, and 22q 11.2 microdeletion. Okay. The question which I asked is one step more further. What is the condition? Now you all understood it is diGeorge syndrome. Okay. Now what are the cardiac defects which are seen in this? Every syndrome, as you remember, we talked about Turner's, talked about Newnan's, and you have a particular set of cardiovascular abnormalities which are very particular to those conditions. And for diGeorge, when I tell you, they are highly, highly associated with TOF. This is why I told you patient has RVH. Patient has a hollow systolic murmur, which is basically a tricuspid murmur, okay, because it was at your lower left sternal border, okay, It was an RBH, it was a VSD, it was a boot-shaped heart. So this is probably telling you patient has TOF. Okay. The other cardiac abnormality that you have to remember when it comes to catch-22 is your truncus arteriosus. Okay. Please don't confuse with write TA as tricuspid atresia. It is truncus arteriosus, which is very characteristically associated with Dodge syndrome. Okay. Is it okay? Okay. Now you tell me, when a 16-year-old girl comes to you with delayed menarche. Okay. On history, you note that there is no developmental concerns. Okay. She is at her 65th percentile for weight and she's at her 5th percentile for height. Okay. She has a broad chest and she has a short webbed neck with a broad chest with delayed menarche. I do a karyotype that turns out to be abnormal. Tell me the most common cardiac condition associated with this disease.
Thomas, let's say bicuspid
This is Turner.
Yes, very good. This is Turner's. Very good.
Aortic, bicuspid aortic one.
Yeah, very, very good. So the answer is bicuspid aortic valve. Can you tell me another abnormality which is very peculiarly associated with Turner's? You tell it, though it is not most common. It may be a second or third more common, but not as common as bicuspid aortic valve. But we do associate that with Turner's. So it is coarctation of aorta. Okay. 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 Now tell me, I write these few options here. Noonan. Okay. I am writing homocystinuria, phenylketonuria, cystinuria. Okay. CAH and Fanconi's anemia. Tell me out of these, which is autosomal dominant?
CAH.
No. Okay. So these are all autosomal recessive. Noonan is autosomal dominant. Okay. Please don't confuse like Turner thinking some X-linked and thinking only females are affected or males are affected. It's autosomal dominant. So both males and females have equal chance of getting Noonan syndrome. That is why this question. Tell me the name of enzyme that was separating the strands of DNA during replication. Who was separating these strands?
Helicase.
Helicase. Very good. And what was the enzyme that was responsible for putting a primer here? Primase, right? Primase, right? And that was synthesizing the complementary strand with the help of DNA polymerase, right? The strands were synthesized in fragments, right? So the rest of the fragments were joined with the help of ligase. Do you all agree with this? Okay. Tell me a sequence of a DNA is given to you as GTAAAC. Okay. Tell me what will be the complementary strand synthesized in the DNA replication for this.
GG.
Yes.
AC GGG T.
Oh, voice is I'm not able to hear. You can write it in the chat box maybe. Didn't understand George. Should I repeat?
No, ma'am. We didn't understand was that autosomal dominant question that you explained later about the penetrance.
The non-penetrance part?
Yeah, that non-penetrance. And the next answer I wrote George.
Okay. So what I told you about autosomal dominant was, see, it is not related to your sex chromosomes, right? X or Y. It is related to my autosomes, which are your first 22 pairs of chromosomes, right? Which you, me, all, whether male, female, anybody has the same 22 pairs of autosomes. And these are the two pairs of our sex chromosomes, X, Y, depending on the male or female, right? And because this gives you a genotype of 46 chromosomes, correct? Now, when I come to a gene, there are alleles of a gene, right? That is why I write any gene as AA or AA. If it is sex linked, I write XX or XY, right? Now these it's called as a allele, right? These are two alleles of a same gene, out of which always and always one is maternal, one is paternal, right? Now, when I get an abnormal gene here, okay, each gene, which is because that is responsible for your genotype, okay, will express some features. Suppose this is normal, it will express features A, B, C, D. This is abnormal, this will express some features. Okay, now when this is not able to express these symptoms or signs, okay, with it's an example, if I tell you, suppose this is a phenylketonuria gene, okay, or this is your hereditary spherocytosis, which is a dominant condition gene, but it's not giving me any signs and symptoms which are responsible for your phenotype of the condition. That is called as your non-penetrance. And because male, female, you and me have same set of autosomes, for autosomal dominant, it doesn't matter whether you are a male or female. Both would be equally affected. Okay. And when I tell you about autosomal recessive, if I write this, I told you this becomes a carrier. Why? Because it is a recessive condition. What I told you last time is it requires both. Okay. Both alleles have to be mutated or abnormal to give you a disease. Okay. Whereas if I tell you about autosomal dominant condition, because it is a dominant thing, only one allele is sufficient to cause me a disease. That is why there is a carrier concept in recessive disorders, but in autosomal or in dominant conditions, I don't have carrier, because even if one is abnormal, I still get the disease. Whereas this genotype in an autosomal recessive condition would become a carrier. Okay. In the same way, further, if I want to extrapolate this, is that if it is manifesting the disease, that is expressing, okay, the variable expressions of a disease. Suppose this disease, one, it's a cystic fibrosis only, or hereditary spherocytosis. Suppose one is coming with hemolysis, the other is coming with pain because of splenomegaly, the other is coming because of stones. So there is a variable expression called as expressivity, right? And in a population, certain percentage may express that, or certain percentage may not express. That is a proportion of population who is carrying a disease causing allele who actually manifests the phenotype. Okay, so suppose this genotype is responsible for giving you stones, right? In my cohort of the population, only one cohort is developing stones. So this is called as the penetrance of that gene. Okay, and because this gene gets expressed here instead of this gene, okay, so this gene takes over or dominates over this gene, which becomes recessive, suppressed. So this is called as phenomena of dominance. And the last option which I was telling you is when you multiply and you get these chromosomes or autosomes in your next generation or from your parents, okay, the risk doesn't increase with pregnancy because you will inherit the same set of autosomes. It is only the X and Y that becomes different. Okay, what happens if a girl child is there? She will get mother's X and one from father's X. But whereas if it is a male child, we will not get an X chromosome from his father because he will get Y from his father. Okay, so suppose if it is an X-linked disease or something else, then the chances of the getting the disease and all changes. But when I talk about autosomal diseases, the chance of successive pregnancies increasing the risk doesn't occur, right? But if I tell you successive pregnancy is just another generations. So when I tell you trinucleotide repeat disorders, they do increase with each generation. But because I transmit the same set of autosomes to successive generations, whether they are carriers, whether they are autosomal dominant, whether they are expressing the phenotype or not, I will not increase the risk with subsequent pregnancies, unlike my sex-linked disorders. Is it okay now? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Tell me, colleague asking you to help in a new diagnostic molecular assay where he wants small amounts of DNA to be very accurately amplified. Which technique are you going to tell him to do for this rapid cloning and analysis of DNA? The first thing that we studied in the class today.
PCR.
Yes? PCR. Very good. Can you what was Western blot was for? Detection of what? Western blot?
Protein.
Protein.
Protein. Okay, good. Uh, this PCR technique is just taking 1 to 2 hours, by the way. It looks like it's a very huge process of denaturation, annealing, and all that. But the amplification and all that actually occurs very fast. Okay. Whereas ELISA was used to detect certain antigen or antibodies, which could be peptides or glycoproteins. Okay. Now, a 27-year-old man comes to you with his wife, where he says that he was diagnosed with phenylketonuria when he was an infant. Okay. Now his symptoms and disease are all well controlled when he is adult now. Maybe he's following all the low protein diet and other things that his doctor is told to follow. He says his wife doesn't have any symptoms, and on genetic testing, you see both the alleles of the phenylketonuria gene are absolutely normal in the female. Okay. So, what is the percentage chance that the child will develop phenylketonuria? Okay. So,
Zero.
answer is 0, 75, 25, 50. Yes,
Zero.
0. Very good.
Zero.
Tell me chances of carrier.
50%.
Very good. So you have to understand this. Obviously, by drawing this, you understand that he is a disease, so both the alleles has to be affected, and she is absolutely normal. So when you do all combination, is only going to give you one defective allele. Okay. But when you understand this by concept also, that I told you autosomal recessive has to have two defective alleles, right? I told you both the alleles have to be defective. And you know, for a allele, both alleles in any person, in any case for that matter, one allele is mother and one allele is father. If I'm telling you mother is absolutely normal, does that any of the child have a chance of getting this? No. Okay, so by this way also, by this logic also, they will not have disease. There is no chance that the offspring is going to inherit two copies of abnormal gene here. Mother or the other partner is absolutely normal. Okay, so when I come to this 43-year female who is coming to you with symptoms of iron overload, okay, liver damage, and on investigation you find patient has hemochromatosis, right? She's not obese, so you rule out NAFLD. Probably she says she's not had alcohol much. Her periods finished at the age of 39 years, so she gives you some gonadal hypogonadism history, right? Husband has no symptoms. On genetic testing, you also find that husband doesn't carry any defective allele, so husband is absolutely normal. Okay, tell me the likelihood that her children would be carriers. Similar concept,
50%.
absolutely 50%. Very good.
25%.
50%.
25%.
50,
50%.
50%. Yeah, and how many would be diseased? Would they be diseased?
50%.
Anybody? No. Oh,
No.
we just discussed. No. How many will be
No.
diseased?
Zero.
Female is absolutely
Zero.
diseased and normal husband. So, do you think they will be diseased? Hemochromatosis is autosomal recessive, by the way. So, is there any chance of getting this
No.
genotype in any of the child? No. Right?
No.
Okay. Tell me listen to this very thing. Now, tell me what's true or what is false about this autosomal dominant and recessive. Okay. You have to tell me both parents. Okay. First thing, both the parents are commonly unaffected in autosomal dominant disease. Second, autosomal recessive inheritance shows phenomena of genetic anticipation. 3. Trinucleotide repeats are usually seen in autosomal recessive disorders. 4th, penetrance is never seen in autosomal dominant. Which are false amongst these four? So both parents are commonly unaffected in autosomal dominant. Anticipation is seen in autosomal recessive. Trinucleotide repeat disorders are usually autosomal recessive, and penetrance is never seen in autosomal dominant. Which are false?
First, both parents unaffected.
Sorry?
Both parents
Yeah, both are
That is
unaffected. True. This is false. No chance. Correct. Is genetic anticipation seen in autosomal recessive? Which was that group of disorders where we
No.
saw genetic anticipation?
In
It
autosomal
was
dominant.
trinucleotide repeat, right? Yeah, and these are what autosomal dominant, right? And we did see this autosomal dominant showing phenomena of penetrance. So all are false. Okay. Now you tell me, if I write 3 unaffected siblings and unaffected parents, suggestive of autosomal recessive inheritance. Is it true, false?
True.
Very good. What does unaffected parent? Now we just learned this concept. What does unaffected parents rule out? Which type of disorder does autosomal dominant is going to rule out? Very good. Very good. Okay. Because of this all exposure to our exogenous and endogenous stimuli around radiation, continuous metabolic process happening in our body, our DNA is also normally prone to damage. Okay. So there is continuously a check mechanism called DNA repair mechanism, which constantly keeps scanning your DNA for any damage. Like a mother nature is also not perfect. We are also not perfect. So anytime such damage occurs, this DNA repair mechanism comes into action and immediately repairs this. And if that repair becomes defective, then you get disease. Okay. So these disease repairs, ones which you need to know some detail, like there is a nucleotide excision repair. What happens is when your DNA gets exposed to ultraviolet light, it forms something called as pyrimidine dimers. Okay. Now, when these pyrimidine dimers are occurring, these pyrimidine dimers are recognized by an enzyme called as endonuclease. Okay. That is going to cut this dimer or the abnormal DNA, excise it and throw it out of the helix. Okay. New bases are going to be replaced. Well, I told you anything where there is synthesis of DNA, RNA, depending on that, you have to understand the enzyme would be. So DNA polymerase will come and replace those bases and join it with the rest of your DNA by the enzyme ligase, like the similar concept which we learned. Okay, so this is something called as nucleotide excision repair that happens. Now, suppose there is a base. Okay, here I have a base, this DNA strand, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Suppose this base undergoes deamination or any other chemical abnormalities like hydroxylation, oxidization, alkylation. Okay, now the base is called as your damaged base. Okay. Now, with damaged base is repaired by an repair mechanism called as base excision repair. Okay. What will happen is this damaged base is going to be recognized first. Okay. The enzyme is called as glycosylase. The glycosylase will come, remove this, and okay, will recognize this like the similar mechanism which we did now. Endonuclease will cut it, throw it out of the helix, okay, synthesize a new base by DNA polymerase, and then join it with the rest of the DNA by the ligase enzyme. Okay, it's just that whether it's pyrimidine dimers or whether it is an abnormal base. So we have nucleotide excision repair, and this is called as your base excision repair. Very similar to excision repair is something called as mismatch repair. Now, what happens here is instead of suppose say guanine, thymine has come. So that is basically your replication error, right? And that is why I told you your enzyme DNA polymerase, if you remember, had some activity. I told you that keeps a check, otherwise we all will have mutations. What was that activity of the enzyme that was keeping this process in check? Do anyone remember that? Which activity I told you during DNA replication, which is there, which helps you. And we also discussed a question that that activity is present in replication, but not in transcription as that much. Because we want replication to be perfect. We don't want any base in DNA to go faulty and give us mutation. Do you all remember something called proofreading? Yeah. Okay, so this is your mismatch repair. So the base excision nucleotide. So now you have to understand that base excision repair was repairing the damaged base, right? The base was cytosine was correct, but the cytosine got damaged because of some chemical reaction or oxidization or something. But in mismatch repair, instead of cytosine base, I'm having guanine. This is the difference. That the damaged bases are repaired by your base excision repair. Okay, so the nucleotide sequence of that DNA is the same. It is not like I wanted a cytosine when I got guanine or any something else apart from that, right? So my helix structure is the same. It's just that one of the bases in structure has got chemically abnormal, or that is why I have to repair, excise that base, get a new base, join it with rest of the DNA, and then my base excision repair is done. Whereas if I'm having a mismatch base, okay, it could be either a small incision or small deletion for that matter. Suppose I want CGG Okay, AT. And now if I get CGG, A or TT, means in the first place only I have an abnormal base. And this is where your mismatch repair comes into picture. Okay, there are other mechanisms also like your homologous end joining, non-homologous end joining. Those details we don't require, but these three, especially the enzymes endonuclease, glycosylase, you have to remember. The rest enzymes you all know. Any synthesis, DNA polymerase. Joining is ligase. Recognition, or here the joining synthesis also was recognized by endonuclease. Okay, and one last thing I told you last time where it was CGGA T. Suppose if I get here as am I reading, I skip A. Okay. I read CGG. Okay. So instead of this reading, I am reading CGG. Then instead of this reading, I am reading AT and some other base here. What was this mutation called as? What is getting shifted along the strand of DNA? The frame of reading
Shift.
ACG, GAT getting shift. Yeah, frame shift mutations. Very good. So change in a base pair is basically your mutation. Now you have to tell me whether, when suppose if I tell you glutamic acid got replaced by valine, so that is going to give you your sickle cell disease. Correct? Now, if that change in DNA is not giving you much effect or not causing any particular disease, what was that mutation called as?
Missense.
Yes, missense. Very good. Or if that mutation was leading to generation of a stop codon, then what was that mutation called as?
Nonsense.
Nonsense. Very good. And insertion deletion of a sequences was leading to, as we saw, frame shift mutations. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So these were the repair mechanisms I told you, and whatever the defect that they were caused. So when I told you nucleotide excision, it is xeroderma pigmentosum. Mismatch repair was your HNPCC or Lynch syndrome. Classically, clinical vignette would give you edema, polyposis of the colon, increased risk of endometrial cancer. These vignette they will describe and they'll tell you what is the defective mechanism here. You have to understand they're talking about Lynch syndrome or HNPCC, which we'll read in details in GIT, obviously. So you have to understand that they're talking about Lynch and that probably it is a mismatch repair defect. Okay. So mutations, we understood point mutations, frame shift mutations. There could be deletion or insertions. Okay. Anything that you want me to reinforce or repeat a little more out of the entire this thing? Questions, most of the in fact we covered extra questions as well today. Otherwise, most of the questions that are incorporated in the PPT we covered last time. Nucleotide excision, hemophilia. This percentage questions we had solved in our first class. Kalmans and Leinfelters, how to differentiate, that also we saw. Variable penetrance, frame shift mutations, missense, nonsense, this also we saw. Anything from this which you want me to reinforce or repeat a little more? Yes?
Ma'am, about the X-linked inheritance.
Okay, what about X-link? Can you tell me, or just overall X-link?
No, just how it is affected. If X-linked dominant and X-linked recessive, how it is affected like that. The inheritance pattern.
Okay. So females are this genotype, males are this genotype, correct? Right? So both the parents
Yes.
are giving X to a female, whereas when it comes to a male child, mother giving X, father is giving Y. Right? Now, when I tell you X-linked recessive, similar to the concept of recessive, even one abnormal allele is okay. So this is also okay, and this is so definitely is diseased. But when I talk about X-linked dominant, like your vitamin D resistant rickets, or even some cases of Rett syndrome or Alport syndrome, right? If it is dominant, even an abnormal gene, one abnormal gene. So this also is abnormal. Okay. This is so abnormal anyway in both the cases, but in dominant, because it's dominant, just one allele is sufficient to cause disease. That is why there is this state here in recessive is a carrier state, and here in dominant, again, it becomes disease, like your autosomal recessive and dominant. Okay? Because if a mother is affected now, if I tell you, suppose if C, this is the mother which is affected, okay? And this is father which is absolutely okay. Okay? Now if I take the permutations XX, XY, XX, XY. Okay? Can you tell me whether this is normal or diseased?
Normal.
Normal. Normal or diseased?
Diseased.
This is diseased?
Sorry, normal. Normal.
Normal.
Sorry.
This is okay,
Disease.
take it as recessive,
Diseased.
huh? No, this is recessive condition.
Carrier.
Carrier. This would be diseased. Correct? So now do you understand when I talk about X-linked recessive disorders, the chances of getting a disease in a male is more as compared to the females? Because for recessive disorders, I need two abnormal alleles. Okay? But in males, because there is only one, there is no chance that he's going to get two abnormal X because only one X. Right? So when I talk about X-linked recessive, chances of males getting the disease are more, whereas females would be more of carriers. Does this
Okay.
statement make sense to you?
Yes,
Right?
sir. Yes, ma'am.
Whereas if it is an X-linked dominant, do you understand whether it is this or whether it is this in a female? Both are diseased, and in males, I don't have those permutation. Whether it is this is going to be diseased in dominant because it is only one X, right? It is only the recessive phenotype that would be having a little differential expression because of number of X chromosomes being different in all the two, right? So this see this statement. X-linked recessive, there is no male to male Now tell me why there is no male to male transmission.
Because
The
mother
male
cannot
child is
transmit
going to
to
get
the
a
Male
Y,
patient.
चाहिए ना?
because the male child is going to get Y chromosome from the father, male, right? Not X, right? Affected males can only have, can you draw this and see for yourself? Affected males can only have unaffected sons and carrier daughters, right? Carrier daughters, because again for recessive condition, I need two abnormal. Both the X in the daughter has to be abnormal. But if I have affected male and I don't have anything in female, so I assume female is a normal, then I don't have two abnormal alleles of X, and that is why my daughters become carrier. And because this abnormal X doesn't go to son, because husband or father is going to give Y to the son, my sons would be absolutely affected. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Now see this. Now in X-linked recessive, what is written? Males are affected more, right? We understood that. An exception to these is seen where patients with Turner syndrome. Why? Because they have only one X
Only
chromosome.
one X.
So if my female is a Turner syndrome phenotype, then I cannot tell that she doesn't have a reduced risk, because now she is also equivalent with respect to a genotype, obviously, equivalent to a male genotype, that she also has only one X chromosome. So now the risk of getting an X-linked recessive disorder in a Turner syndrome becomes as equal to that of any other male. True?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And dominant is going to manifest whether it is a male or a female, because there is no carrier state at all. Okay? Come on, when just I saw the slide. That's why. Tell me two examples of mitochondrial inheritance.
Melas.
Okay, very good.
Cancer syndrome.
Yes, very good. Okay. Last time we did one MCQ. I just want to reinforce. Tell me in question, how do you differentiate whether you're dealing with Kalmans or Klinefelters? Apart from clinical features, obviously. If I tell you more about anosmia, because both is going to have hypogonadism, right? But if I just add, some gynecomastia history, tall height or something, you go towards Klinefelter. If I tell anosmia or something, you go towards Kalman, which is the other more definitive way to tell whether it's Kalman or Klinefelters. Both are hypogonadism. So testosterone is going to be low in both.
Low.
So what other marker do you see?
FH.
Very good, very good. So Calben's was hypogonadotropic. The word itself tells you what is your gonadotropins, FSH-LH. So hypogonadol, less. Whereas Klinefelter's was hypergonado. So FSH-LH becomes on the higher end. Okay? This was Turner's that we saw. This slide was saw. Okay, these features in some places I've just added because some very clinical, very known clinical vignettes, they may not directly give you the name of the disease and ask. That is why some features I've added. Anyway, when you do that system, that disease is going to come to you. Catch 22, can somebody tell me the full form? Anyone? DNA structure we saw, right? Histones, nucleosomes. Please don't go into doing a lot of thesis work on replication translation because it is endless. Repair mechanisms we saw, match base excision, nucleotide, the defects, the mutations, the transcription. Yes, by who is going to tell me the catch 22 and then maybe we can finish this class. Yes. Okay, tell me at least start. What was catch 22? C was which abnormality? Cardiac or congenital? Yes. Cardiac or congenital?
Cardiac.
Yes. What was A? Abnormal faces, no? Okay, tell me the important question that we discussed. What was the cardiac defects that we discussed with George?
TOF,
Yes, very good. TOF and TA was
Truncus arteriosus.
Truncus arteriosus.
truncus arteriosus. Yes. This horrendous pathway that you deal with in endocrine. What is the inheritance pattern?
autosomal recessive.
Recessive. Very good. Now tell me which gene out of tumor suppressor and proto-oncogene should I have a loss of function mutation to give me a cancer? Which gene should under tumor suppressor gene? Good. Very good. Okay. Tell me a person coming to you with a lens dislocation, which is superotemporal lens dislocation, long,
Marfan.
huge, Marfan's. Okay. Tell me the defect of Marfan's. Which gene is abnormal in Marfan's?
Fibrillin gene.
Fibrillin gene. Very good. Tell me the defect seen because of defective nucleotide excision repair.
Xeroderma pigmentosa.
Okay, very good. Now let's suppose if a 22-year-old female is coming to me with ataxia and a restricted movements in the clinic. Okay, she tells me that she's developed a bilateral hearing loss, probably sensory neural in origin at the age of 9 years. Okay, then she goes on to develop retinitis pigmentosa at 10 years and type 1 diabetes at 15 years. Okay, then at 18 years of age, she started developing irregular heart rhythms, palpitations. She was found to have complete heart block, and then there was a permanent pacemaker that was inserted in it. Okay, tell me what is the inheritance pattern of this disease? You want me to repeat the question?
No. Autosomal recessive.
No, first you have to tell me what is the disease.
Fragile X syndrome.
No, Fragile X. Fragile X comes with retinitis pigmentosa. Did I tell you about microcephaly, mental retardation, a child with large testes? Yeah, a 20-year-old woman would come to you with Fragile X. Yes, retinitis pigmentosa, diabetes. Did we see these features with Fragile X? Heart block.
Down syndrome,
No.
Noonan's,
Restricted eye movements, ataxia, sensory neural hearing loss, retinitis pigmentosa, heart block, diabetes, 20 to 20-year-old female. What is the inheritance? Now, can you tell me?
Did mode?
Where is the diabetes insipidus and optic atrophy here? So this is Kearns-Sayre syndrome. Okay, that is the inheritance is mitochondrial. Okay, any features usually telling you about SNHL, retinitis pigmentosa, muscle weakness, ataxia, recurrent strokes, lactic acidosis, diabetes, complete heart block. You have to think towards mitochondrial inheritance. Okay, because they involve genes of your oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, that is your energy production powerhouse of your cell. Mitochondrial inheritance. What is the feature of mitochondrial inheritance?
Maternal.
Maternal inheritance. Oh, a 18-year-old woman is coming to me with a blood pressure of 180, 130. Okay. 18-year-old woman is coming to me with a blood pressure of 180, 130. Okay. On examination, you see the patient has cafe au lait spots and some axillary freckling. There are also multiple, you can say, small fibrous lesions on her extremities and torso. And she gives you a history of surgery done for her scoliosis as she was a child. Tell me the inheritance pattern of this disease. Very easy. What should you think of when you see this? Yes? Have you all heard of neurofibromatosis 1? Right? 6 or
Yes,
more
yes.
cafe au lait macules. Yes, with neurofibromas, with history of scoliosis, with Lisch nodules, with axillary freckling. Okay? Tell me one level more question ahead. Why this patient has 180, 130 BP? What is the connection between these two?
MEN?
Sorry?
MEN? MEN, multiple endocrine neoplasia, pheochromocytoma association.
Pheochromocytoma. Very good. So the answer is pheo. Yes. Where do you see this periangular fibromas, Sjagren's patches?
In the torso.
Yeah. Huh?
In the torso, near the flanks.
No. Which disease do you see? Periangual fibromas, Sjagren's patches, adenoma sebaceum.
Tuberous sclerosis.
Yeah. Autosomal. Autosomal. Recessive or dominant?
Recessive.
Recessive.
Dominant, autosomal dominant.
Autosomal dominant. Very good. It's autosomal dominant. Okay. Do you remember the condition that we saw with mucocutaneous pigmentation, with a history of colon cancer, intersusception, coming to you with GI polyps and cancers and GI bleeding? What was the inheritance of that disease? Yeah, so what was the inheritance? This was an MCQ that we discussed last time. Huge Steger, very good. What was the inheritance?
Dominant. Autosomal dominant.
Autosomal?
Dominant.
Dominant. Very good. Okay. Tell me, what was the hormone that was associated for pathogenesis of obesity in the Prader-Willi? What did I tell? Who was responsible for that Prader-Willi Bachu to eat more and more hyperphagia and then grow obese?
Leptin?
No?
Ghrelin.
Ghrelin. Very good. Ghrelin was more. That is why, okay. Suppose 35-year man is coming to me at a neurology OPD, okay, and he's telling that he's been suffering from increasing forgetfulness, for low mood, anxiety, okay, and he's taking some regular GP medications for his low mood and anxiety, okay, and he doesn't know much about his parents, and he finds that his father has committed a suicide at the age of 52. Okay, on examination, you find coriform movements and dizziness, okay. The routine blood test and CT scan that I do because of forgetfulness, low mood, anxiety as a routine screening test is all unremarkable, normal. Okay, I am going to ask you what would be the way by which you are going to screen for the likely diagnosis in this child? Okay. Maybe giving options would better conceptualize this question. So I tell you, a 35-year-old man coming to with me with low mood, anxiety, increasing forgetfulness, coriform movements and clumsiness. Okay, my blood test and CT scan is normal. Father committed suicide at the age of 52. Okay, now what is the way by which I'm going to make the underlying diagnosis, screen the underlying diagnosis? So what will be the optimal way I would prefer? Whether it would be northern blotting, Western blotting, PCR, East blotting, or whether it would be biopsy.
Western blot.
Why? What is Western blot for?
For protein.
Okay. Which protein you want here to be expressed?
This is, I suppose, copper handling problem. That is,
Do you think can you do a blot just to screen a person and say probably you have a copper problem?
no. We have to.
If you
find
go with a
the-
little clinical acumen, I need a screening test, non-invasive, which is going to give me a quicker result, which will help me confirm the further diagnostic investigation. Like you always have a screening test, no? You do IGF-1 levels for acromegaly and screening, and then you go and do the complete OGTT or all for diagnosis of acromegaly, or you directly subject the patient to 72 hours testing together, right? So I want to screen this patient with coriform movements, forgetfulness with a positive family history. Okay, I don't know what is the problem. I want some screening that gives me hint about what the problem is, and then maybe I can go and do the confirmative testing and then start treatment. This is a two-step question. First, you have to understand the probable diagnosis here.
Wilson's,
Okay, Wilson's will come with neuropsychiatric features.
Yes.
KF ring on
There is no ring. There is no GI abnormality at all. I am not telling you any basal ganglia features, which is more towards Wilson's. Okay, so in these cases, you have to think about Huntington's disease, Huntington's chorea or Huntington's disease. Okay, suicide of the father, neurological complications at an early age, right? Father, I told you at 52. This person is coming to me at 35. What is this phenomena called as? Anticipation.
Anticipation.
Right? So the earliest way is Huntington's is a trinucleotide repeat. In this huge DNA, I cannot see a three particular nucleotide. No, I have to amplify it to make the detection easy, and that is why I will use PCR. Okay? You know northern western blotting. For just information, if you want, there is something called eastern blotting also. Don't think it is not there only. That is used for your post-translational modification of proteins. Okay, proteins after coming out of your translational cocoon are subjected to post-translational modification, like your mRNA is subjected to post-transcriptional. Okay, maybe some phosphorylation or adding some lipid to the protein. These all post-translational modifications is by eastern blotting. Okay. Okay. So when I tell you a 40-year-old man is coming to me with shortness of breath since past few months, okay, he's not able to catch his routine bus by running, which he's usually doing for his work. On evaluation, you find ejection fraction is 35%. Okay, I do a ECG which shows me RBBB morphology with increased PR interval. Okay, on examination, you find the BP of the patient is 105/80, pulse is 42, but their pulse is regular. Okay, there is bilateral ptosis. Okay, I give an ophthalmological reference that tells me cataract is also there along with ptosis. And on auscultation, I find all crackles diffuse over the chest. Okay, now he's estranged from his family. He never knew his father or brother who was. But he just remembers that when he was small, doctor told sister has some muscle problem. Okay, his sister has a muscle problem and he's lost a child in his infancy. and they've lost a child in their infancy. Can you tell me what is the inheritance pattern of this disease?
This is myotonic dystrophy.
Very good. So heart block, cardiomyopathy, ptosis, cataract. Okay. Father getting affected. Okay. He probably coming at a 40-year age, which is probably earlier thinking of anticipation, myotonic dystrophy. Okay. And trinucleotide repeat, I told you, are autosomal. Yes. Autosomal
Dominant.
dominant. Which trinucleotide was not showing the phenomena of anticipation?
Frederick ataxia.
Friedreich's ataxia. Very good. 25-year-old man who is probably pursuing his chartered accountancy course is coming to me with severe abdominal pain, vomiting, and hypertension. Okay. She says that she had three similar attacks in the past 2 years. Okay. And GP told her it is anxiety and gave pills by which she felt symptomatically okay for intermittent periods. Okay, on examination, I already see the BP is towards 155/92 and pulse is okay 90 and regular. Okay, abdomen is okay, bowel sounds are heard, but there is some tenderness seen on the abdomen on examination. Hemoglobin is slightly towards lower side, maybe you can take it as 12.9. Okay, counts are WBC is okay, platelets are okay, so there is no pancytopenia. Okay, sodium potassium is also okay. Creatinine is also okay, 95 micromoles per liter. You can take 50 to 120 as normal. Okay. On other further routine testing, I found out CT abdomen was also normal. There was no liver involvement or any intestinal abnormal. I ruled out intestinal obstruction for the severe pain. There is no pheochromocytoma that explains me the hypertension in a young person. But I find there is elevated porphobilinogen levels. Okay, and there is elevated aminolevulinic acid levels. Okay, can you tell me the enzyme deficient leading to this and the inheritance pattern of this disease? You don't have to read anything about this. Will tell you what is the problem.
Acute
Anxiety,
intermittent
sympathetic
porphyria.
overactivity, yeah, acute intermittent
It is
porphyria. Very good. So it is autosomal dominant in inheritance. Okay, and it is because of deficiency of porphobilinogen deaminase, which is your PBG deaminase. Matlab your PBG is not going to get deaminated, and that is going to lead to your elevated levels of PBG and ALA. Okay? Yes?
yes,
Yes or no?
yes, yes.
Yes, very good. Okay, tell me the this inheritance pattern of this Osler-Weber-Rendu syndrome. This also we saw last time. Hmm? Yes? Autosomal? Dominant. Okay. A 24 weeks pregnant female, okay, with her first child, okay, comes and tells you, has a, I have a brother who is vitamin D resistant rickets patient. She wants to know the chances of her baby, that's the first pregnancy, having the condition. She tells she's absolutely well, has not had any testing or even went to a doctor any time before. Okay. Until now, these 24 weeks were all uneventful. What is the approximate probability of the woman passing on the condition to her child?
25%.
25, right?
No, madam, 50%. 50%. Because one gene is affected. It is autosomal, X-linked recessive.
X-linked what? Dominant, recessive?
No, X-linked, sorry, X-linked, this is X-linked dominant. Because
Now tell me.
X-linked dominant.
So tell me.
Then, if the child is male, then there is chance of 50%.
Okay, tell me.
Chance of,
Okay.
oh, sorry.
Don't go by just pure maths. Tell me. If she's telling she's well and till now she was all uneventful, okay? Do you understand that she probably has this genotype? Because it is
Sorry, madam. Sorry,
dominant. If it is dominant, okay, even this is going to give problem and even this is going to give problem.
Yes, madam.
Right? Now, if I tell chances of her baby having the disease, now if her baby is male, this X will come from
Mother.
mother.
No,
If a female,
mother.
both X will come from
Come from one mother,
mother
one
and
father.
father. Right? Did I tell anything about father being a carrier or a disease in the question?
No, madam.
No. Right? Dominant is there. So do you think whether even if the father is no, abnormal here, still it would be only one abnormal gene? There is no concept of carrier here. Right? So even if I'm a confuser or a bouncer here that the brother is having disease, you have to understand that the mother's genotype is absolutely normal. Okay? Patient having the condition being X-linked dominant, the chance of the disease being in the offspring is absolutely 0% here.
Zero.
Do you all understand this? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. A 17-year-old man comes to my endocrinology clinic which tells me significant weight gain over the past 3 months. Okay. Has difficulty learning in school, hyperreflexibility. Okay. You find a BP of 150, pulse of 80, a BMI of 35. All the routine blood tests which a patient has been done for his weight gain is all normal. That is why now you go towards syndromic diagnosis and you suspect a disease. Tell me the likely inheritance of that in a pattern of developing that disease, the process of developing that disease. Which phenomena?
Autosomal recessive with variable penetrance.
Variable penetrance, first of all, is a dominant phenomena. Please don't confuse.
Sorry.
Okay. And why recessive? What is tell me the diagnosis. Significant weight gain, not able to learn, difficulty learning in school, a 17-year-old child with a little high BP, remarkably high BMI, difficulties in learning at school, significant weight gain, borderline high BP, hyperflexibility. What is all this telling you? Okay, I tell you, I want to investigate him for Prader-Willi. Now tell me what is the defective mechanism here? Which group of disorder this Prader-Willi come into? Genomic imprinting disorder, right? Tell me whether it is paternally imprinted or maternally.
Maternal.
Paternally. So you have to understand when I say paternal imprinted, means paternal imprinting is the abnormal mechanism in this patient, right? So that is why when I talk about this, the other maternal allele in you and me, normal person, is all silenced, right? And it is only the paternal allele which is giving expression, and that is why the function is there in you and me. But in Prader-Willi, this normal expression of paternal gene will not occur because it is getting imprinted. This is the meaning of paternally imprinted. And the exact opposite will be there in your Angelman. Okay? Can you tell me the chromosome number linked to the both? Yes? 15. Okay? Now, a middle-aged woman is coming to you with a 6-month history of increasing shortness of breath, which is exertional. Okay. She tells that her son is affected by muscle weakness, like his brother was also affected. Okay. That muscle weakness is also giving him shortness of breath. Okay. On evaluation, your mother found out that the son has cardiac dysfunction also, which is probably because of myocardial involvement. And the patient now gradually is developing difficulty in walking and calf pseudo hypertrophy. Tell me the inheritance pattern of this disease.
This is X-linked
X-linked. Very good. Tell me the diagnosis.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Fusion is muscular dystrophy. Very good. Okay, a 55-year-old man is coming to me with shortness of breath and palpitations. Okay, on examination, I find there is a displaced apex beat and I find a S3, that is gallop rhythm. Echo shows left ventricular wall thickness of 15 mm. Can you think of some disease in a cardiomyopathy which comes to
Hypertrophic
you with
cardiomyopathy.
hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? Any one mutation, if you all remember? Beta myosin heavy chain mutation. Okay. What was the recessive inheritance pattern for Fabry's disease?
Autosomal recessive.
No. X-linked. Okay.
Yes.
Fabry's was X-linked. Okay. What was for cystic fibrosis?
AR.
AR.
The also
Very
autosomal
good.
recessive.
18-year-old army. Sorry. Huh. A 18-year-old army person is coming to you before joining army for his preliminary health screening program. And you find the patient he's a male, 18-year male, has a hemoglobin of 11.5. Okay. Where I do a smear along with the CBC, I find there is spherocytes. Okay. He gives a history that one of his sibling also has this issue. Okay. There were similar problem told in his sibling who is also a brother. And out of this, one brother has a history of gallbladder removal at one earlier stages of his life. Okay. I'll tell you the options now. A is actin, B is G6PD, C is spectrin and encheirin, and D is CFTR. Tell me which of the following would be probably mutated.
And Chirin.
Okay. Why? What is the
C,
diagnosis?
C,
Hereditary spherocytosis.
is
Okay. Inheritance pattern?
X-linked recessive.
Oh, autosomal?
dominant. Autosomal dominant.
Dominant. Very good. What about G6PD? What is this inheritance of
X-linked.
G6PD deficiency was what?
It is X-linked recessive.
X-linked. Very good. Recessive. Very good. Very good. X-linked recessive. Can you tell me some other examples for X-linked recessive? One or two more? We just saw one of in a question, 2-3 question back. Saw one more X-linked, no? One myopathy, one muscle dystrophy, which was X-linked.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Yes, very good.
Duchenne
Duchenne's,
muscular
yes.
dystrophy.
Any other example? Any other example, you know?
Hemophilia.
Okay, very good. Did we see this last time that JAK2 V617F mutation? Where was this seen?
Polycythemia vera.
Polycythemia vera. So now in retrospect, do you remember where was BCR-ABL seen?
CML, chronic myeloid leukemia.
CML, chronic myeloid leukemia, yes. Any other mutations you remember and you can associate it with a disease? Out of the ones we discussed also or out of your base knowledge you can tell any. Can you tell a particular gene and the disease that is associated with it? Can you enlist 3-4 examples of that? Like alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, if I say. That is because of defective production of alpha-1 antitrypsin. It is an autosomal recessive condition. Okay, I told you glutamic acid replaced by valine, sickle cell disease, which is again autosomal recessive condition. G6PD deficiency, which is X-linked, is because of deficiency of glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Right? Can you enlist 3-4 examples like that of a defective gene and a disease?
Wilson's disease,
Okay, very good. What is the gene, if you remember?
that is copper transporter.
Okay, tell me inheritance
I,
of this.
it is
Yes.
autosomal
Okay.
recessive.
What is the inherit? Very good. Okay. What is the gene?
Gene,
Does anybody else remember this? ATP7B.
cerebroplasmin,
That's not.
cerebroplasmin.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Tell me this, how much percentage it is, okay? 27-year-old comes with his wife as they both want to start a family. And he says that he was diagnosed with phenylketonuria when he was a very small person. Okay, wife says that she is a carrier person but not on any treatment. Okay, this is husband who is proper diseased. Wife is a carrier. Tell me the percentage of affected children that they are going to produce.
50% carrier.
Yes. How many are diseased here? So do you agree
Okay,
this
ma'am.
is AA,
White is carrier.
AA,
Madam?
AA? Yes. Phenylketonuria is what? Recessive, dominant? Autosomal
Recessive.
recessive, no?
See,
Yes. So these two people will become carriers and these two
carrier
people would be
50% will be
diseased.
disease.
What would 50% disease, 50% carrier. So they will our question, they'll twist the question and ask you then what is the percentage of normal individuals, absolutely normal. So that time the answer would become 0. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
suppose a couple is coming and attending a genetic screening program for inherited disorder that has been observed in his husband's family. Okay. He says he has muscle weakness that affects his face. Okay. Distal part of his arms and legs. On examination, when you shake his hand, you find a delayed relaxation with slightly increased tone when you shake his hand. He says that
Myotonic
in his
dystrophy.
family, well, very good. Okay. Okay, tell me what is the repeat? Which repeats get amplified in myotonic dystrophy?
CAG, madam. I am not sure. CAG.
Yeah, very
CTG.
good. It
Okay.
is
Yes.
CTG. Yes. Can you tell me some other disorder with its repeat, with trinucleotide repeat?
That is Huntington's disease.
Huntington's.
And so many
Okay.
spinocerebellar ataxias. Number I have forgotten. So many yes, there are
Okay. No,
spinocerebellar ataxias.
very good. Very good. The famous that we discussed all time.
Fragile X syndrome.
Okay. Yeah, the one that was not showing anticipation was Frederick, right?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Can somebody tell me repeats? I want repeat. Can you tell me that this repeat and that is why this is a disorder, like we saw now? CTG repeats or myotonic dystrophy. Frederick is what repeat?
GA.
Very good. Fragile X is? Okay. 29-year women, Fragile X or CGG. 29-year-old woman has vitamin D resistant rickets, comes to the genetic clinic with her partner. She's now worried that her children will be affected by the disease. Okay. They have not told me anything about the partner. Tell me what best fits this clinical scenario. First, listen to the options very carefully. All female children will be free of symptoms. B. All male children will be free of symptoms. Half of female children will have symptoms worse than the mother. Okay. Or it is 100% of the male children will have symptoms worse than the mother. Or none of the children will inherit the disease.
Madam C.
Yes.
Madam C will be half of the her female child will be what's that mother?
Why?
Because mother is it is autosomal. Sorry, just a minute. Autosomal recessive. Then 50% will be there.
No, no. You tell me first the inheritance pattern. Don't be in a hurry to give the answer. So tell me what is vitamin D
Okay.
resistant ricket inheritance? It
It is
is
X-linked recessive.
dominant. Okay. It is
Sorry,
X-linked
X-linked dominant.
dominant.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now
Then
I am telling you the female is X-linked dominant. So probably this X-linked dominant condition probably comes with a this thing only, one abnormal allele. Okay. They are not telling you both the alleles are abnormal. And because it is
yes, one.
X-linked, let's take it as this is the phenotype for the female. And I told the partner is absolutely normal. Okay. Now what are the progeny that is produced because of this? This is XX, XY, XX, XY. Okay. This is abnormal X. Okay. Can you see female being normal and one female is affected?
Yes.
Right? So does the picture tell you that half of the female children are even affected? Forget about developing symptoms being worse than the mother.
How about the affected? Yes.
Half are affected. But now do you understand that this X chromosome is the same as this X chromosome?
Yes.
Yes. And this is not a
Yes.
trinucleotide or anything else that the patient is going to develop a Wurzer disease. This
Oh,
genotype and
yes.
this genotype is exactly same.
Same.
If
Yes.
the
Yes.
genotypes are same, phenotypes will
But
exactly
they
be
will be
the
same.
same, and that is why they will
Same.
not develop a severe disease.
Okay.
Right? None of the children will inherit the disease. Do you think none of them have inherited? No, the two
No,
have very well
50%
inherited.
will inherit.
Right. Right. Next, what other options I gave? All female children will be free of symptoms. Wrong, right?
Wrong.
All male children are free of symptoms is wrong. None of the children are inheriting the disease is also wrong. So now we all,
You
as
know, all are
usual, we
wrong.
always get confused with options, right? So what are the rest two options? All male children will have worse symptoms than the other, and half of the female children will have worse symptoms than their mother. First of all, half of the female now we already ruled. So what remains is
Rule.
all male children will have worse symptoms than their mother. That is the answer.
Yes,
Okay,
madam.
now
Yeah.
let's discuss that. X-linked dominant. Okay, this was the female, this was the male, right? Now, do you understand? Females have two X chromosomes. Okay, so to function these two X chromosomes, suppose these two X chromosomes are together doing 10 functions in my body. If one goes away, do you understand that still 4 to 5 functions would be normally done? And that is
Yes.
why out of 10 symptoms, maybe I will only develop 5. But when I come to this individual, it is this. Do you understand that all 10 are
Yes.
carried? The burden is just on one X chromosome.
Yes. Yes.
That is why my entire 10 set of functions would be affected. And instead of 5 symptoms, the male counterpart will come with 9 to 10 symptoms. So can I
Yes,
say the
madam.
male counterpart is going to have more severe disease than the female counterpart?
Yes, madam.
Understanding? So please understand,
Yes,
when
madam.
I tell
Yes,
you
madam.
about carrier in recessive, the chance become more for females. Okay? Even for X-linked recessive, when it is XY, okay? I told you what, and males can't be carrier.
Yes.
Okay? And when I told you X-linked dominant, also the concept holds true. Do you understand?
Yes, madam.
That this person is still going to have higher chance of developing the disease than this. Disease will be
Yes, madam.
developed even in this. Okay, disease will be developed even in this. But if I tell you who is going to come with a worse disease, what will be your answer? A or B?
Male, madam. Male. Because there's
Male.
only one
Males
X
will come
chromosome.
with a worse. Yes, very good. Exactly. Do you understand? See, these are all concepts after ratifying that list of inherited which fashion, what fashion, and every time if you blindly draw a progeny, also most of the times you will get the answer. But please try to understand what the statement is also telling you. where you clearly know that the two alleles are one from mother, one from father. And if I tell you mother is absolutely normal and the condition is recessive, you don't have to waste time in drawing this. You know that either it will be a carrier or disease depending upon recessive dominant. Person can't be absolutely AA if one parent is normal. Did you understand what I told you now?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Now, a 28-year woman is coming to me with history of recurrent chest infections and apnea on exertion. On examination, patient finds have short stature, pectus excavatum, and widely spaced nipples. Auscultation tells me that there is a very harsh, loud, maybe even grade 4 systolic ejection murmur at the left upper sternal border. Okay. What is the cardiac abnormality likely associated with this condition in her? Okay, I'll give you
Pulmonary
options.
stenosis.
But no. Oh, yes, very good. What is the diagnosis? Okay, then I don't know the options. Pulmonary stenosis.
Turner syndrome.
No? Huh? What? What did
That
I
is the
tell
pulmonary
you?
stenosis.
Bicuspid aortic valve and coarctation of aorta, no? For Turner's, I
Yes,
told
that
this
is
set.
most common. Yeah.
Yes. And what is it? Pulmonary stenosis? Noonan syndrome.
Oh, Noonan syndrome.
Okay.
Yes,
Increased
madam.
right ventricular pressure. Okay. The left upper sternal border is nothing but your pulmonary area. So pulmonary murmur, short stature, pectus excavatum. These physical traits, along with this murmur of pulmonary murmur, tells me it is Noonan.
Noonan
Don't get
syndrome.
biased by seeing widely spaced nipples and think about Turner. They'll see this that they are giving a pulmonary murmur within you. Pulmonary murmur in the question. Bicuspid aortic and coarctation, will they give pulmonary murmurs to you? That is why this is Noonan's, and the characteristic cardiac abnormality associated with Noonan's is your pulmonary stenosis. Okay?
Yes, madam.
Okay. With this note, I end this class. Okay. Any doubts are most
Thank you
welcome.
so
If you
much.
want to ask anything, I can keep this open for some time, or else we call it a day.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.